Techlandia is recorded at the Central Office on the East Side in Portland. Central Office is a one-stop for all your office or meeting needs. Check them out at centraloffice.com.
Welcome to the latest episode of Techlandia, Tao's regular podcast series. I'm Skip Newberry, President and CEO of Tao. And with us is our guest today. We have David Ngene with PacSpace. David, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Skip, and thank you for having me on there. And great pronunciation as well. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been working on it.
Yeah.
So, David, as most folks know, I like to start off with an ask of our guests, which is to, spend a few minutes kind of walking us through your own professional journey. Take us up to the present day with PacSpace.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. So I'm David Ngene, and it's funny to think about my journey because it's never linear. I'm sure none of our journeys are linear. I started back, born and raised in Texas, Houston, Texas, out the shout out to my home state, but I went to Northwestern University and actually studied mechanical engineering when I was there. But it was weird because around my senior year, I took a basic design course, and that kind of changed my trajectory just in life forever. I really love the idea of design thinking, and the principles, first, different first order principles that really help inform what you're creating outside of the lens of just analytics. And I just loved design. And so I actually took a bit of a pivot and started taking some art classes, believe it or not. Added that to my repertoire when I graduated, the height of the 2008 market bust. And I mean, it was a crazy time. But for me, it's fortunate. I landed a job with JP Morgan out of school where I worked as an associate, learning about business, learning about the markets and kind of how the world moved and shook through a crazy time. Definitely decided that world wasn't for me. So I went and worked in architecture for about 4.5 years before going back to graduate school to study industrial design, where I then worked at Nike as an innovation director for over a decade. And so from there, it's just been quite the amazing journey for me, applying all of these different disciplines to my role today here with PacSpace. So it's been fun.
That's fantastic. So you've got a mix of sort of financial acumen that you acquired along the way, going straight into like a banking crisis, no less, when you started your job with a bank.
Yes,
and
literally.
and then also, the right side of the brain, right? And a more arts focused degree. How is kind of the focus on sort of design been a superpower for you in your career?
When you have to think with both sides, it forces you to ground yourself and anchor yourself and thinking with both sides of your brain, because engineering and design and art, they all kind of share a linear throughput where you're actually working to solve a problem. You want to showcase a problem. Either it's about solving for yourself, which is what art is, or solving for others, which is what engineering is. And industrial design kind of floats in between those two spaces. And I just love the activation of my entire brain as I work through problem solving. And so I always see the problem, solving through the designer lens, even for my business as well. And so it's just something that's really benefited me just to ground myself and just to use my entire brain during the process.
I love that. When I was, I want to say in middle school, I came across a book called Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain.
Oh,
And
wow.
the whole idea was like you become more focused as an artist if you change your perspective. And
Yes.
so, you had to essentially draw upside down, or if you're right-handed, you're sketching with your left.
Oh,
And
wow.
just that sort of ability to focus unlocked all sorts of like, new potential that I didn't realize, I had, and frankly, a lot of the other people in my class found a similar thing. Anyway, it was a little bit of an aside, but I'm always intrigued by someone who finds themselves in business and has had an arts sort of background or got some sort of certification or degree or just lived experience over the years, because it's such I think really interesting kind of toolkit to have, especially in understanding the world.
Yes, I agree. 1,000%.
Awesome. Well, in terms of, the current company with PacSpace. So you were at Nike, amazing company, you were in innovation there. And what prompted you to leave and decide, hey, I'm going to do PacSpace?
It's so funny. Everybody asks me that all the time, where he's just like, "You were at Nike. Why the heck did you leave?" you know, it was one of those deals where you see the world moving in a direction. And I love Nike. I actually love my job. Like it was a job I used to speed to work just because I just love getting there and just thinking and being inspired by the people around me. And so there's actually no qualms with what I did there. But I saw the world moving in this interesting direction. I saw these new tools coming online. We were first at the beginnings of AI. Blockchain had made its splash to the world, and we all got crypto crazy and crypto goes burr and everything else. But I saw the world kind of moving outside of the berm in a way that I wanted to kind of engage with. That's the way I would say it felt interesting to me, and I just wanted to put all these different pieces together. Nike was amazing, probably the best paid training I've ever had in my entire life. To come into a space and you're convincing people and doing the things. I'm basically doing the same thing I did at Nike externally with my company here, but it's just now I don't have the billions of dollars behind me. But I did love the fact that I got to do so many different things at Nike and then really get to apply those things in my day-to-day with PacSpace.
So tell me more about PacSpace, the company.
Yes, I can tell you about the journey to get there as well. Like this is a pretty quick.
That would be great.
Yeah, so want to talk about a pivot, man. This is the mother of all pivots here. We actually started with a backpack, believe it or not. It was one of those deals where we never set out to make a backpack. We're like, okay, we're just going to leave and make a backpack company. No, there was that idea there, but it was more about understanding the process of creating the product from end to end and documented it because we were really interested in provenance. So I'm not sure most people know this, but in 2027, the European Union is requiring all physical products like textiles and shoes and pants and hats to have chips in there or some way to have an RFID or NFC chip that enables you to track and view the provenance of their product. Provenance meaning its origins of the materials, carbon scores, just to make sure from a an eco-friendly, earth-friendly means of producing these products that we are actually tracking and giving the consumer that information. So every product is required to have that sort of ability to track down to where the materials come from and and country of origin. And so I wanted to explore that deeper and document the process and create something that actually lasted well beyond the owners. And we can track the owners and can track the history and the stories. And I thought it was really interesting as a backpack, as a vehicle first, because of ubiquitous and everybody had one. And it's just cool. It's kind of something I've never really done before. So we just figured we'd just go and explore there. So built these bags and they have these chips. Every single bag has a chip in there. And that chip allows you to scan it, see the history of the bag. You can get to engage with the consumers, other consumers, and other people into this broader networking community. But the underlying bones that we've had powering it, it's a software I started writing a few years back, actually could enable so much more. And so when we were showing this to people, I actually showed it to our lawyer, and they were like, "Whoa, this is pretty new and this is novel. You should check this out." And I think this can be much broader than where you're focusing it at here. Because I was really thinking about digital closets, provenance for supply chain. But then I realized this primitive we had created was applicable to everything. And so when that happens, we're like, okay, well, we need to build this into something. Let's focus on this. And that's where PacSpace came from. We talked about the mother of pivots, and we talked about the origins of the product, thinking about the application of the technology. So the technology inherently in the bags was usable across the board to so many other fields and industries. And we essentially created this primitive that I've been working on for a few years behind the scenes that powered our chips that were in our bags. And so we sat down with a few people, we looked at the opportunities, the core technology, and it's applicable across the board to many other industries. And so we decided to explore a few different areas with this product, with the technology, and really took it from there. And that's what birthed PacSpace.
Awesome. So in terms of, this idea of, with the backpack, right? So,
Yes.
and then morphing from there into, okay, how do you track a product, and also how do you produce one, right? But,
Yes.
in terms of where PacSpace started and kind of where it is now, I was wondering if you could kind of walk through like what exactly led to the current state where you're looking at, essentially how to essentially point to truth when it comes to reconciliation of discrepancies in usage.
Yeah. So, early in August, I'll say August 2025, we had this huge aha moment in terms of what we can do with our technology at PacSpace, where we are able to provide essentially a receipt to anything. that's really tiny, really small, really cheap. And we have something that's small and light, but still gives you the the truth behind a situation, whether something happened or not. I mean, true microtransactions can actually exist. Like we birthed a primitive that allows for microtransactions to be a real thing. And for us, you want to pick a starting point that makes sense where people are feeling the pain today. So it went from this big aha, like we found this, we created this primitive world, look at this thing, to narrowing our focus to a specific lane. Was like, hey, let's focus on autonomy, because that's where the world's headed. And you think about where these failure modes start to pop up and exist, that's in these autonomous systems. And then from within there, we really focused our wedge down to usage disputes. Usage disputes meaning API metering and calling on certain tokens or compute or whatever it might be. If two parties are measuring something and there's money involved, there's going to be disagreement. So we figured this is the perfect avenue for us to really kind of build this infrastructure, this primitive around this infrastructure.
I love that. So in other words, you've got, quite a bit at stake, right? There's money at stake. And so
Yeah.
both parties are going to be incentivized to essentially track and monitor, okay, what is the real usage amount here?
Yes.
And so are there lots of examples then in day to day where, one party, with one automated system is like, oh, well, usage looks like X. And then the other party with another monitoring system that's automated is like, well, no, we think usage looks like Y. And then they're stuck, right? It's like, okay, where's the truth? Which is it? So that's where you all come in.
Yes. And so a great example of this is any company that has an API that somebody calls. So imagine Twilio. We use Twilio. SendGrid. So those are the folks that essentially create emails. You call the API, you get certain number of credits per month, you pay a certain fee. And that's it. That's critical. That's mission critical for a lot of companies when they're signing up new users or they're creating a service that needs to be verified via email. They have to call that API to generate that email. If say they get 100 calls per month, then you go and you have 100 new consumers come in, and or 99 of them generate calls, but then the Twilio sends you a bill for overages for 250. You're like, whoa, 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 where did this come from? Like, I only use 99 on my end. That's how many I counted. They're like, no, actually, you use 250. And how do you reconcile that without seeing into their system and checking their server logs? And did somebody on their end change the server logs? And then we start to run into all these questions until all these mission critical applications lead with, stalled invoices, people not being paid on time, concessions being made on both sides. And what that means is trust is eroding over time. And if you can't trust that system that's being metered and you're actually paying for, that leads to higher things like churn and abandonment and all these different things that are negative towards that business providing that service. And so that's where we come in.
Nice. So essentially you're providing a service that benefits both parties at the end of the day, but the real sort of pull for this and demand is for the company that is trying to sell a service and wants to essentially demonstrate to customers that, hey, we have a certain amount of integrity to our tracking because look, you can actually transparently see through this third party service, i.e. PacSpace, that, this is truly what it says it is. It's immutable.
Yes, and so PacSpace itself, we're neutral. We actually don't meter the billing or anything. We actually anchor that information to public ledgers. And so we
Yep.
use the system where we're able to compute and derive the actual balance based off of the hashes that we use. And so this allows both parties to actually check the numbers. They use the same math, they use the same yardstick essentially, and they should get the same numbers. And what it does is meaning that the person anchoring the information is not necessarily, even if the information is wrong, they'll still anchor. We anchor what happens after the fact. What we're
Yep.
providing is a way for people to come and look and see where the problem stems. So you can quickly put up a flag if something's off and you can compare numbers. And that way you can reconcile quicker. And so in an automated world where we're going to more and more and more automated systems and agents, speaking of agents and more humans out of the loop, we need a system that can keep up with that. Because if you don't, you start to have drift. So imagine this. Every month there's an issue with the numbers on both ends. Parties need to reconcile and they have to stop everything. All right, push the stop button. The whole factory stops essentially, and all the agents have to be put on hold to introduce the human back into the loop to slowly figure out the issue. What we did was created a system that can now reconcile at below the human layer at machine speed. And so this is the power goal as we go into this automated agentic future. We need a system that can keep up and keep two parties from drifting apart. We're essentially the force that holds things together.
Love it. Love it. So, in terms of some of the different markets that you're potentially going to be targeting, with this service, where do you see the greatest potential traction in terms of demand right out of the gate?
Right out the gate, it's with these usage-based companies. So anybody
Mhm.
focusing on APIs for AI tokens, compute, any sort of system that has a developer API that you call, this is where we're starting out. This is our wedge. This is where we're focused today. The future, the sky's the limit. Like we're thinking, I mean, we touch every industry in a significant way, in a very meaningful way, from payments to supply chain to government to all sorts of things. With this primitive can be applied across the board. And so when we talk about governments, I mean, we're talking about future state where passports can have a state tied to it that can then be checked instantaneously, and then you can have a state shown for what that product is in an immutable way that can be only changed by the active party. There's so many things that we can do with this primitive. And so we're excited for the fact that once we start embedding ourselves in, it's going to be very, very, very hard to unwind what we do at PacSpace. And then it's just going to slowly integrate outwards into everything.
That's fascinating. As many of the listeners know, I'm kind of obsessed with digital transformation in government. You went exactly right there when I kind of asked that question of, okay, so where do you focus? I mean, digital IDs, this could be massive.
If this is going to be, this is the only way something like this works. We check the shapes of to try to get something to work like this, and the shape of this primitive is what powers this future world that we're all moving towards. So we need
Yeah.
something shaped like this to actually make those things work.
It's awesome. So great. So in terms of the state of the company right now, what are some of the things that you're most excited about as this kind of market evolves? And then also conversely, like, anything that's keeping you up at night that's top of mind?
Everything keeps me up at night. I think the thing that gets me most excited, it's like one of those days, one of those deals, starting a company. But I think the thing that gets me the most excited is when I think about when I introduce this primitive and this infrastructure to somebody new. Like even people thinking everybody's mind is squarely in the autonomous agentic world right now. But then they think about how it works. And when I describe to them the failure modes that present themselves first in these autonomous systems and our solution, people's mouths drop. I mean, when we've been on calls with some very big companies and talked about what our primitive can do, and they put a lot of time and money and research into this space, and they're like, "Holy crap! How did you backpack yokels figure this out?" And because it's one of those deals where it flummoxes teams because I think they're focused on the outcomes of the autonomous systems without thinking, okay, what if that agent goes in and does something? Then how do we confirm what it did? Like we used to just be obsessed with the answer. Like show me what's the answer. Now with these autonomous systems kind of working on our behalf, the question people ask themselves is how do we know? How do we know that it did that? And so when we talk about what this primitive is, they get to the how does it know pretty quickly. And I mean, their mouths hit the floor, and that's happened several times. So that gets me excited. The things that keep me up at night are just everything when building a business. It's raising money, it's finding customers, it's all the same old stuff. Like even though you think you have this amazing thing, there's still a mental model breaking that happens. And so you have to train people and educate folks and show people what this thing is. And so our job right now is finding the people who understand what the problem is and moving towards and being very focused on those people right now. But if anything keeps me up, it's literally these conversations with these folks, and hopefully they understand the writing on the wall and what it is that we're creating. So I think about that constantly.
And just so, in case we've got any listeners who are investors, so you are raising currently then,
Yes.
and yes, and you are looking for investors,
Yes, I am
just to
looking
be
for
clear.
investors specifically that understand neutral settlement infrastructure for usage disputes. So anybody that's understands the API space, anybody who's felt this pain of reconciliation at the end of every month, any CTOs or head of engineerings that's understand this pain significantly, that this is who we're targeting. And so we are raising right now.
Awesome. Awesome. And so what prompted you to, do the company here in Oregon? Obviously, you were at Nike for a while, so you were here to begin with, but like, you could potentially do a company like this anywhere. So what made you say, you know what? I'm gonna do it here.
You know, I think over time we're going to realize that proximity matters less and less and less. I can fly down to San Francisco. I can be there anytime I want. And so
Totally.
me living there, I mean, outside of just meeting somebody at the gym and all those different things, I mean, I think that's the only thing I'm lacking. But I think we can be anywhere at any time. And so I figured, why not start here at home, here in Portland? I like the developing and budding community here around technology and really try to do something a bit different than the traditional, Silicon Valley, blitzscale tech company thing. I think there's a little bit more grit and determination here in Portland, and I just wanted to tap into that. Me, I'm not as well networked in the tech space, believe it or not. My network sits here in more product, but I love the ability to tap into my network here to then start to get spread my reach much further in terms of who I can contact and who I can network with. So, but I'm a big believer that if you can do this here, you can do it anywhere.
Awesome.
Yeah.
In terms of what you're reading or listening to kind of keep up on this space, like what are you listening to or reading right now? Do you think our listeners here might benefit from?
Oh, there's so much. Like I think about Ethan Malik, he's a great just speaker. Think here about technology and the co-intelligence of humanity and AI. And I think I just kind of start there. Then I listen to pretty much everything. I consume anything that's any podcast that's talking about AI right now. But I spend a lot of my time more in just regular old fashioned books. I think it's funny, like the one that's been big for me is The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. It's a very interesting book, and this is probably my third time reading it now. Since my friend told me about it years ago. I just love the grit and determination of the protagonist just to push through even when the world says otherwise. And so for me, I find a lot of power and energy that just energizes me to just keep going. Even when we're doing something that's difficult as building a new primitive that's going to change the world. And so, but I'm like the one singing, screaming to the heavens about it, and everybody's telling you otherwise. And so I love that book because in the end, we all know, he found his success and found he really innovated and changed the world with what he was creating. And I just see that, we're doing the same thing. So I just find a lot of similarities, and that's why I love that book.
Definitely, it's one of those books that does have that protagonist where the world at times seems to be kind of like arrayed against them, right? And yet they keep moving forward, they persevere.
Yeah, when you're building a company, I mean, everybody who's built something feels like this, because what you're trying to do is introduce something new in the world. You're seeing a future and you're trying to convince people of it. And it's hard. It's really hard. And you just have to have the conviction and passion and drive to keep going. Because that's the only thing that's going to keep you going because everybody wants you to stop. So I love that story.
Awesome. Awesome. That's inspiring. So glad you were able to take some time out of your busy schedule. I mean, running a company, but let alone starting one too is not for the faint of heart. And there's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. So I appreciate your willingness to spend some time with us today. Any kind of like last words of wisdom or parting thoughts before we wrap up?
Words of wisdom or parting thoughts. I think those who are out there, you know, and have an idea that they want to explore, I implore them to just go do it. Now, there's no better time than now to get out there and to start exploring. Nobody told you to quit your job or go crazy or jump off to the deep end, but start tinkering, start playing around, start exploring and breaking stuff on your own in your house in your free time and explore your thoughts and ideas. I mean, these tools that are coming online that are available to us to use today, there's never been a better opportunity to get out and build something. So don't be afraid to get out and just start building and exploring and seeing where it goes. Because we're moving into this weird, wild, kind of crazy world. And I think you'll find so much joy and pleasure in just creating and being part of this, this big revolution for humanity. So, yeah.
Well, David, thank you for taking some time to join us. Really enjoyed it. Love what you're doing at PacSpace. Want to continue to support you any way we can here at Tau as you move forward. And with that, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Skip, and this is great. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap on this episode of Techlandia, the podcast, where innovation meets insight. If you enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to follow us, leave a review, and share it with your fellow tech explorers. You can follow us at techoregon.org for updates and more tech-fueled content. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep building the future.